Yeah, I'm a little late. What's a deadline though?
Yeah, real humble, Tachii. W-Tech brought to you in part by Scanpia, and like Brago, we ain't gotta waste no time.
Hey, but we're not gonna waste no more time.
Let's do this different.
This is exactly what I've been waiting for.
So different. For the last few months, I've been trying to hunt down the biggest secrets that Oda was hiding in front of our faces, and I unironically found it. Let's hope all of the things in my current Google registry don't really taint how my family views me. Welcome to the Comic String Conspiracy. And like the music, the One Piece breaks the canon. So smash that bell, share this video out, it's real special. I made it just for you. Yes, you, personally. Page 1. God Valley and the Lucia event increase the water levels. The refurbished weapon of Vegapunk.
This is exactly what I've been waiting for.
Yes.
This is exactly, I don't mean to sound like Cat Williams, but this is exactly what I've been waiting for.
Spinning back to the agenda.
I think it's refurbished. I don't think he invented it. Was named the Mazafurei. Oda is so much of a troll, but I figured it out. Furei means proclamation, or pine tree, or Frey, which was the other name for Freya, the Vanir goddess who was married to Odin. Furei is the secret name of the ex-wife of Joy Boy, and the weapon that Vegapunk refurbished was the object that Beige himself floated to in the chapter 594 titled Message. This weapon was once a part of Jaya as its right eye, known as Nakrawa or Dreamland, from chapter 643 titled Phantom, and in chapter 290, Light of Shandora, Kalgara says the bell is supposed to help souls return from heaven, and Nolan's sailors even found a map and an eternal pose pointing to Jaya, implying to me that the right eye was capable of moving on its own and needed an eternal pose to be able to return back to Jaya, making it a moving sky island, just like how Zoe is right now on the back of Zunisha. But if you read the titles of 594, 643, and 290, you can read it as the Phantom Message to the Light of Shandora. Remember that, we're going to be doing that a lot later. So Saint Frey Mu Norona is consistent also with even the Gorosei namings, seeing as Saint Shepherd Jew Peter is the warrior god of agriculture. Very interesting title. We'll get back to the agriculture part in a bit, but using Gorowase, Jew means 10, and from Figarland Garling we can see that holy knights can knight themselves. So what if you were such a good holy knight that you were ushered into the 5 elder stars? Would you be given a new name? That's a genuine question. But warrior gods, let's talk about them. In Norse mythologies, there were 2 factions of warrior gods. You had the Aesir, ran by Odin, and you had the Vanir, led by Frey. The Vanir and the Aesir would consistently do battle, until one day where they decided to make peace by spitting into a bucket. Gross, I know. But from that, a god was born, Kvasir, and his power was to be able to translate dreams of all the other gods, technically making him Frey's child, but also the embodied spirit of peace between the divine. Frey also ruled over Valhalla, whilst wearing an all-black falcon cloak. I believe the Valhalla of this mythology is currently the Pangaea Castle the Gorosei and Imu currently reside in. The castle that sits at the top of the tectonic plates of the destroyed realms of the former intergalactic world tree and crashed onto the Sky King planet of Uranus. And the ancient weapon Uranus's bloodline lied within Lily D. Nefertari, who herself was inspired from Scheherazade. Now here's the joke. Scheherazade had a cartoon, and there were 3 princesses. Do you see the cover? I'm willing to guess that one of them is Pluton, one of them is Poseidon, the other one's Uranus. How do I think that? The first Kozuki princess, the first mermaid princess, and the first Nefertari princess. Ancient weapons were people, and these people were honored as gods according to Kalgara. Compounded with Muse explaining how her ancestors resided within holy white ancestor trees, I think this gives us a clue to the name of the ancient kingdom, the Tachii kingdom. More later. You're gonna love how meta that is. With the Alabastan poneglyph giving no info on any Nefertari, but instead deciding to reference Draculian lore. If we follow the connections here, then Dracul Mihawk himself is a celestial dragon, and the ghost princess Perona was foreshadowing to the person sitting on the empty throne right now. Joyboy D Nefertari is the Odin allegory, since there is no Odin in One Piece. We have a Prince Loki existing in Elbaf, and it's weird how there's no mentions of a Thor outside of Enel's named move. So what happened to Thor, and even Odin? Because the giants practice a named move called Gungnir, and that's the spear of Odin. So what if Loki of Elbaf isn't a giant at all? What if he is a Wotan? Shadow's Asgard gives me the direct inspiration for this thought train. Moria turned himself into a giant frogman for some weird reason, I don't know why. So Loki's amphibian silhouette could be explained by the mix-up of giant and fishman DNA. We know Big Pan from the Foxy Pirates canonically is the only Wotan we have, but I think Loki, Jack the Drought, and even former Vice Admiral Jaguar D. Saul are all Wotans. The Yetis seem to be a mink giant hybrid, and even the revolutionary Ushiano seems to be a mink fishman hybrid himself. One Piece is the most racially diverse shonen series to ever exist on purpose, because Oda loves hiding where fairies are, Normandy Charlotte, and vampires with Dequise and Gillette. So how much history was wiped from 800 years ago? I don't think much. Kuma's Bible has the Uranus lineage on it, and Sanji held another candidate of Uranus during Skypiea when he was holding a picture of the sepia-toned Vivi that could have been Willie Caron on the crashed St. Brice. Anything humans can imagine is a possibility in reality. And what was the alchemical symbol of Uranus again? Gold, pierced by the spear of Mars, or the spear of Odin. And what do we see on the crashed St. Brice? A sepia-toned Vivi pierced by a spear. The literal symbol of Uranus is in the Son of the Sky's hands, Sora Vinsmoke. And the test name for Judge Vinsmoke was Saint Germain, who was a famous alchemist and wrote down spells for immortality. Deep game on how egregious Eiichiro Oda can be in terms of his self-referentialism, because it's a little bit of a meme to be like, oh yeah, Oda foreshadowed all of this. Absolutely, he does, and it's egregious. Let's flash back to chapter 866, the Big Mom flashback, which I really want to do highlight because we're going to be getting into shared technology and passing down techniques through time and having time affect and crystallize those things for over an era, i.e. hockey is the force. But I'll get into that. With the Big Mom chapter, where we got confirmation that she did not experience hunger pangs until after eating semla, meaning that her entire genealogy, her entire bloodline elements were altered by the consumption of that semla. Her eyes were never red up until the moment of eating it, despite being left alone by her parents for months. As we can see that it's first snowing in this panel, and in the previous panel there's no snow. But from there, in that chapter, 866, the SBS, Oda decided to confirm a whole bunch of birthdays for people, using the prophetic technique of Goruwase. Well, what's really egregious about this is, if you focus on Kanjuro, during Whole Cake Island, we did not know that Kanjuro was a traitor or involved with any form of snake activities. But Oda decided to confirm it as July 21st. In the brackets, you can see here it's Inatsu no Isha, or Summer Doctor, using Goruwase prophecism. That is also apparently, in Oda's eyes, a Rakugo story. What a Rakugo story is, quote, Rakugo stories are usually rather long, humorous stories which can sometimes be also sentimental. The true art of Rakugo is to not simply tell the story and deliver the punchline, but to increase the comedic value by acting out the story with just the right tone and precise body gestures. And what did he do when he revealed himself as the traitor? Motherfucker smiled in the rain. Oda is egregious with this shit. That right there, what we described, was in real life One Piece syncretism, where Oda decided to fusion dance two different ideas together and make a whole brand new one. How is that connected to how real life civilizations developed over time? Well, Rome prolifically syncretized everything into their cultures. When it comes to their gods, Jupiter was just an allegory to Zeus from the Greeks that they dominated and ruled over. So yeah, Oda's been doing this shit forever. Peep game on how egregious the metatextual references are as well. When Ace, during his cover story, was hunting down Blackbeard, Oda decided to make it, hey, I'm gonna title this chapter Divina Commedia, which is directly referencing the Divine Comedy of Dante's descent into hell during Dante's Inferno, the Divine Comedy or Divine Tragedy, written by an Italian man exodused from his city. And what happened to Ace? And where did Luffy try to free him from? He busted into Impel Down, the place that is quite literally the direct reference visually to the Divine Comedy through its levels. And during this arc of Impel Down, Oda decided to confirm what the beetle piece was. He put the beetle that Luffy's gonna ride in, that is in the center of the reverse mountain, aka the sky's treasure chest. And Denden Mushi's mean bug, electricity transmission bugs. So there's a giant beetle on the cover of Beast Hell. And remember, beetles are everything a child dreams for. We'll get into that, don't worry. But also during Impel Down, we got our next little bit of fun chapter wordplay. If you play with the titles of chapter 540, 541, and 542, you can read it as Another Story to Tell, Infinite Hell, the likes of which we have never seen. And on the cover of this one with Karoo and the dog, this one is foreshadowing to the idea that Karoo is currently dead and his bloodline is connected to the Nefertaris and that aspect of Uranus, that Im Nefertari, or rather Im Nerona, the half and half existence of the king of the world, is currently essentially ruling over the polar jet streams of the planet, operated through the God Valley Dreamland Hydro Pistons from chapter 594 message. But don't worry, we get into more wordplay later. But let's look at what the gods of the Red Line, the Lunarians, what they used to do. Built inside of them, same way how the Tomte, aka the Tantatas, link in description for the whole playlist to get caught up. The Tantatas themselves were based off of ancient dwarves that were metal workers, supporting the idea that automatas were just the machine versions that the Tantatas left behind when they descended, or rather after Ragnarok happened and they decided to cohabitate on the planet Uranus where their friends lied. And Wotans are important because Watatsume was the only Wotan, according to this video, that was titled Sea God in Jinbei's canon cover story. So Wotans, Tomtes, and Lunarians are all incredibly important here because those were the three enslaved races that were used by the celestial dragons to alchemically create their devil fruit artificial forest factory plant that is the artificial devil fruit forest at the top of the Red Line, Marijua, where the reverie happens. All them dead slaves underneath there support the idea that it was a manufacturing plant and the idea of the Red Line counterforce, because I believe that this planet does not spin. It has 5 celestial objects with 4 celestial orbits around it, and 2 of those pairs share the same orbit. There are 2 moons in One Piece, and there are 2 suns in One Piece. We'll get into that, don't worry. It's an entirely flagrant tangent. And thank you so much for dealing with all of these tangents and interjections, by the way. I only really decided to keep the best parts of the rough draft that I decided to release. If you join the channel, you can see exactly what the thought process was prior to this. But let's stay on genealogy and ancient Onis for a second here, because I've said previously that the Red Line is currently a massive graveyard of giant Onis supporting the summit to High West. I still do think that, and there's quite a lot of evidence to support that, especially after knowing that the water levels of the planet raised by 1 meter. Thank you, Oda. But also amongst Oda's test works, Yamato, according to Oda's Road to Laugh Tale Volume 3, was supposed to be a 3-eyed Oni girl, meaning that Pudding picked up the aspects of Big Mom that just so happened to be activated when she ate Semla, since Big Mom herself happens to have Oni blood inside of her, supported by the idea that Jorul, the son of an ancient giant who could have been alive during the Void Century War itself, referred to her as a god of disaster. Now, all of the history was erased from the world. It was quite literally cleansed from the planet, foreshadowed by this Khalifa cover. It was done with soap and bubbles, quite literally. But let's focus on the Lunarian Nefertari connection that exists as hero water or Binks sake, because the Lunarians were the ones to have brewed Binks sake under the tutelage of the Nerona family. Why do I say under the tutelage of the Nerona family? Because it was the Nerona family that was wished into existence. How do I mean that? They were the family that was associated with the Ox Royce's initial construction. Why do I say the Ox Royce? Because through wordplay, that's the same name as the fish that ate the Dia of Osiris during the Osiris Smith. That's why there are 13 poneglyphs that are needed to lead you to where the One Piece is. Thanks to this Crying Frankie cover, we see 13 sea turtles drifting into the ocean and a Crying Frankie holding the sign for departure. Why is a Crying Frankie important? The last time we got a Frankie crying cover, that was with Senor Pink prior to the reveal of the Jinbei Seraphim. The Jinbei Seraphim has Senor Pink's fruit. Here's the wildest thing about everything that I just said right now. Yamato was also the name of the first ever constructed magneto-hydrodynamic drive. In Japan, funny enough, a magneto-hydrodynamic drive is a method of propelling vehicles using only electric and magnetic fields with no moving parts and accelerating an electrically conductive propellant, liquid or gas, with magneto-hydrodynamics. This fluid, or any fluid, is directed to the rear as a reaction and the vehicle accelerates forward. Magneto-hydrodynamics is a model of electrically conducting fluids that treats all interpenetrating particle species together as a single continuous medium. In smaller words,
They use this shit to study the sun, and salt water is used to generate a current
and propel things fast. That's what the Grand Line is. That's why the deep sea current and the deep current are perpetually rotating and grinding against each other within the Terai current that literally operates as a perpetual motion machine. Remember back in the most successful part 2? Yes. Reverse Mountain is the ultimate knock-up or knock-down stream, and the slaves that are used to construct the Tequila Wolf Bridge and operate the artificial forest and escalator of Marie Joie kind of support the idea of a gigantic reference that a lot of people have missed for the Red Line in terms of all of its imagery, the Bloody Meridian, one of the darkest pieces of Western media ever written in history. Oda's been referencing the Wizard of Oz all the way back in Alabasta, quite literally. City of Green, Elumalu. What's wild about the Green City of Elumalu and its chapters 161 is that supports the idea that Buggy himself is of the Nefertari lineage. Him and Vivi biologically have the same hair color. I have no example for the nose, but hey, so what's really magical about this gigantic interjection? Yamato was also the name of the first ever constructed magneto-hydrodynamic drive. Prior to Yamato being released as a character in One Piece, Oda is making One Piece the biggest reference joke in history. A Rakugo story, if you will. Another example is him directly hiding a reference to Gulliver's Travels and the sunken ship of the Lilliputians behind Robin sexy fan service. Yes, this was a shout out to Western literature, not just a booba play. But I'll get more into the sea gods and Wotans thing in the sorbet addendum, cause Saul is gonna be the man to teach Kid how to kill Shanks, I promise. But let's rotate back all the way to the idea of Im Nerona themselves being a fairy queen. We brought up the idea of butterfly queens earlier because one of the homies, Lucas, no longer a lonely mage, he brought up a genius idea of my observation that Kong, supreme commander of all of the Marines, has an office at the bottom of the Red Line, and he's a little bit tense and makes me feel like he's like some form of fishman to a degree. And goated Lucas brings up, hey, what if this is a King Kong Mothra reference? That would be perfectly symbolic of all of the references that Oda's been making, not just to Japanese media through Astro Boy Drip on Egghead Island, and even who the traitor was, if we take into consideration the Pokemon reference of Dr. Blaine in the manga creating Mewtwo, and right now Mewtwo would be York Punk. The only one of the other punks that seems to know a process of getting into the system of being a celestial dragon, kind of supporting the idea that you don't need to be a part of a royal family to be a member of the celestial dragons. Doflamingo couldn't get in when he offered the head of his father because his father's head wasn't a genius. If York Punk provides over all of Punk Records, that is the most valuable head to provide. And the biggest thing in all of One Piece is the concept of perception. Not only did Lilith Punk say, hey, don't let your eyes be tricked when walking into a door that seems to operate similarly to the invisible pyramid of the Gates of Justice, but also Atlas Punk saying that anything can be replicated in the future, including organs, and Chopper's amazed by this perfectly. So when Volume 4 Billion canon One Piece material comes out and the main character from Film Red says directly to the audience, what's the difference between reality and virtual reality? All of One Piece is inside of a sleeping bubble. Why do I say that? Because it's a music box that's lost its music. It's literally a song off its rhythm. And the perfect reference is chapter 738 and its title, Special Officer Sugar, Treble Army. What does a treble do? A treble clef changes the pitch of which song you're playing. And there are 9 notes and 9 holy nights. Yup, this is also foreshadowing, but mainly because the person who requested this cover, according to canon Viz material printed by Stephen Paul himself, was requested by Noda Skywalker. Obviously, huge shoutouts to my boy Hattori, because this is a name that Oda uses in order to hide future events. Perfect example, all of the Celestial Dragon and D stuff that I've been perpetuating. What do we see here? We have 22 mice being built by a Frankie. I told you Frankies were important because they foreshadow what Onis did. They departed from the planet with their 13 pieces cut up because they were meant to be Voltroned back into that reality. The strongest bonds were always the friends we made along the way. That's the core theme of One Piece, and with jewels representing age, like with Bonnie's fruit pushing out that same jewel from Vegapunk, kind of supports that idea as well.
For the full expose, you gotta watch out for the theory coming from the boy Hattori, aka No Chill Dill. But on the topic of putting bows on things, previous parts and in other videos, check out the playlist in the description, I've brought up the idea that the map is the national treasure that Doflamingo himself was referring to. He was because Child Dofi would get faded by War Curie. Doflamingo himself ate the string fruit. What are panties made of? String. How is this relevant? Bellamy died and then died good. And when he died among the hearts of sailors. Flags. And when he died, he found something indestructible. Indestructible things last forever. So those panties would be the great filter of reality. That's what Dofi's connected to, and that's why he's going to be joining Cross Guild. Crocopole addendum coming in the future. That's actually the only video I've ever deleted from my channel. Link in description for the whole playlist, by the way. Usopp said he would be playing with a chemical called keratin back in Skypiea, and that's what the map is made out of. It's the national treasure map that directs the narrative, literally breaking, or rather continuing the canon from the Void Century after its retcon happened. It's the most metatextual thing on the planet. Subliminally, I've dropped in this video before that the Sky Boss Gadatsu was foreshadowing to what the Gorosei are going to be able to do. Well, Gadatsu had dials in his suit. Vegapunk built dark matter suits for the Gorosei, and abstractly, they're able to make that liquid form of Haki exist, and it's driven by their own convictions, aka their imagination. It's just another side to the coin. Nika is the canvas. They are the ink. Blackbeard is the pen. He's also going to be the Hippo King, because for some reason, the amount of connections to Son Goku Blackbeard has is stupid. Playlist in description. He's also a Cloboterman. And the captain, Rox D. Zebek, was a taboo because his real name was Ragnarox D. Zebek. A Ragnarok's epic. His name was the taboo erased from the void because it was the inconvenient truth of the war that Joy Boy led with his dead friend, the Voltron Ors. Like how the 5 Scabbards Voltroned Odin literally to be able to have a conversation with Kaido right before cutting his scar again.
Let's connect Egypt and Norse mythologies through Oda's now discovered practice of syncretism. The Aesir god Odin made the world with the giant Ymir's body and put a border around it, and it was held together by the giant snake Jormungandr. Jormungandr is the Norse allegory to the god Apophis from Egyptian mythology, and Thor during Ragnarok is meant to do battle with Jormungandr, similarly to how Nefertum and Apophis did battles daily. These cyclical patterns mirror each other because these represent the cycles of day and night, or creation and destruction and rebirth. This is also supported by the third Bible in One Piece, the Oharan acknowledged Progressio, the Asgardian dream to break out of this cycle and these processes. The Buddhists refer to this cycle as the samsara. So that's another bit of syncretism that we have to add in as well, because it's just been a consistent narrative human thing to break out of any cycle. And Luffy in an SBS directly by Oda was referred to as a dream breaker. So the silhouette in Elbaf is just a stump of an already destroyed world tree, because the number of realms and the number of planets in our solar system match up perfectly. And if Ragnarok already happened in One Piece, like I've suggested before and I'm suggesting now, well then that's not a tree on Elbaf. That's a tower of fate. Similar to how Zeph's chef hat is not even a hat. Oda's referred to it as a tower of fate. The world tree in our mythologies has its roots next to two wells, by the way. One of them representing the past, and the other one representing the magical void of creation, both guarded by the great serpent Nidhogg. That serpent and the Nerona family represent the great filter of all interdimensional travels, space, time, the ebbs and flows of destiny and fate that all creation exists in. That's kind of fitting for the abstract concept of cosmic horror manifested in One Piece, currently sitting on that empty throne, almost like an inverse to the Kvasir myth that I brought up earlier. But Oda thought he was really sweet hiding Joy Boy D Nefertari returning to Alabasta without his sister. Nah bro, I'm activated, I'm locked in. Lily's blunder was not being able to tell a decent story, or at least a good enough story to put a child to bed. When her lineage factor was stolen from her, it took 800 years for another Uranus to spawn, meaning Poseidon and Uranus are the sovereigns that are meant to meet. And Joy Boy was supposed to bring the fishmen to the surface under the same sun, but couldn't and left an apology. During the writing of that apology, I believe Joy Boy constructed those 13 poneglyphs that reveal the real history and point to the One Piece. But what would be so funny that Goldie Roger laughed hysterically? And why would it be so important that Odin himself ripped out the last page of his journal? Well, if you flip A for Aesir upside down, you get V for Vanir. But the line for A makes it also represent pantsu, or panties. And wanpisu is also the Japanese word for a woman's dress. So if a man's real romance is adventure, then according to Oda, a man's real adventure is from One Piece to pantsu. Or as Oda described, the main theme of Jaya, a marriage to the consummation of one. Laugh Tale has an indestructible flag made from indestructible panties hoisted high and flying. The deeper meaning behind the importance of these panties would be lost on all those sailors who lack the maturity to appreciate the romance of adventure. Also, name a more iconic duo than anime girls in panties. I will gladly wait.
There's already a pretty strong existing fan canon of Mihawk being the son of Silver's Rayleigh. The link in the comments if you made it. I don't want to take credit for that one. But what I will take credit for is predicting another celestial dragon family that has yet to be revealed in the story. The Rayleigh family. Yeah, Silver's Rayleigh was a celestial dragon as well. Yeah, that would actually give a lot of context as to even how Roger himself even got knowledge of God Valley and even got to there. His first mate, the first person that he met, who by the way was on a boat during Roger and Rayleigh's introduction, where Rayleigh said that his house was recently burned down. Now, using the Bartholomew Kuma celestial dragon logic here, that would mean that Rayleigh left Marijua. And that's actually substantiated by Hachan himself saving him, so thematically, it's another celestial dragon gaining humanity from meeting a fishman.
Freya Mu Narona. Freya in Norse mythology even had a chariot that was carried by 2 cats. The imagery was present even back in Skypiea with the black bird boat that Sanji was driving. And the connection of Mother Freya Mu Narona connects the Bible Genesis to the Bible Progressio found in Ohara, which was the Asgardian dream to break out of the cycle of death, creation, and rebirth. The previous events that I just stated though were foreshadowed in the 334 Big Trouble in the Secret Room. Do you see the giant snake? Do you see the party pose that the Straw Hats are partaking in? Do you notice the writing on the snake? Those are poneglyph writing texts. And do you see how many fish there are? There are 16 fish flying into that snake's mouth. This is symbolically telling us the process in which the great Moon Narona continues to retain their form.
Let's circle back to why there's no Thor in One Piece. Thor made the Big Bang. Waratsume is a Wotan and was the only thing called the sea god in the story. Hosen means found treasure, according to that barrel in Thriller Bark. Sorbet addendum is going to be huge. Not an hour, 30 minutes. Pay it forward. Remember, like and share, please. Oda is referencing artwork and artists. Let me explain. The Narona family, Candlesticks of Christianity. That was brought up earlier. There's another painting, Another World. MC Escher is one of the most famous painters and philosophers in history, bar none. This painting is called Another World. Do you see the design of these birds? It's almost strikingly similar to the mast of the ship of the St. Brice if you were to spice in a little bit of a Norse theme. Remembering the Freya mythology and that she had a black falcon cloak and a ship that she drove with a golden boar led by 2 sea cats. You see here that each of them is looking in a different direction, but all of the settings and perspectives are the same. They're all in a dream. They're all sleeping beauties.
So if immortality was the technique that the ancient kingdom was able to perform, hearkening back to the Enel poneglyphs, where a quote light was being placed inside of these automatas and they're able to experience all forms of sentience, then this is just more evidence of the comic string. Let me just break it down for you. Comics, myths, public personas, these all have individual weight and force, and they are all exactly like genetics, where they get stronger or weaker due to the Darwinian aspect of how time works. And this logic is also effective on memes as well.
And if you have been good little goobers, which I know you are, you would remember in previous parts, memes include traditions, stories, ideas, and even names. So how time affects the abstract concept of ideas is important because it shows us the duality that exists in One Piece. Light is both a particle and a wave. Perfect example, Fujitora and Foxy from the Foxy Pirates. The both of them have very similar beams, but their effect on the actual object is entirely different. Fujitora shoots out gravitons, giving that object weight, allowing him to summon meteors from the sky. Foxy is able to slow things down, so a form of light is able to affect both time and space. Taking that into consideration, the Sun Tree Eve is not a sun tree. It's a giant mangrove with an elegant sunflower at the top of it, and the very top of it is on the inside of the red port, because the branches that come down around Fishman Island resemble the mangroves on Sabaody Archipelago, and there is a resin that comes from those mangroves, and people coat their ships with it. If you remember much earlier in the video, and in several other parts, we brought up how the Shandian belief of the holy white ancestor trees and the canon soul fire that we see with Brook and Lao Ji being green, it would allow us to really connect the idea that people were able to visit the dead and the country of their souls in the pre-void century. Toko's initial wish to see her dad again during the Fire Festival is the biggest proponent of this, because Wano, Skypiea,
Zoe, Fishman Island, and Alabasta are all places connected to Joy Boy's story. So with these stories, and even the in-canon reason for Nika being summoned, that being the wish of freedom from the oppressed, shows that things are being called upon literally and abstractly in One Piece. Who's Who definitely needed a hero, and Nika showed up at least as a silhouette to him, but Nika did show up as a silhouette, but not just to him, to all of the oppressed people of Wano, including one of the two other supernovas, my boy, Eustace Captain Kidd. Shanks is going to die by the end of this year, and Kid is going to be the one to do it, and the man to train him to do it is going to be Jaguar D. Saul. Remember his name, and the fact that he's a Wotan for later. But let's talk about the other side of memes, ceremonies, and what the Straw Hats did prior to crossing Reverse Mountain. They kicked open the lid of a beer barrel to celebrate reaching the Grand Line. It's sort of a One Piece sailing ceremony. I wanted to show more, but this was the end of the 100th chapter, and I didn't have much time. But isn't it kind of cool anyway? First, there's an opening ceremony before shipbuilding begins. Then there's the completion ceremony when the ship is finished. And finally, there's a huge celebration and a christening when the ship is launched. And during that christening, that ship gets a name. So the most exciting ceremony is the ship's birthday or christening. One of the rituals is the striking of a champagne bottle against the bow of the ship. If the bottle doesn't break, it's a bad omen. So the person throwing the bottle has to be very serious about it. I've heard the Viking sailing ceremonies included the spilling of sacrificial blood on the ship. Ragnarok already happened in One Piece, and that was the long arm, long leg civil war. Because right now, in canon, we are 1,000 years away from that event. If there is more to One Piece after this year, which there definitely should be, that would mean that One Piece's story would be ending on its 1001 Arabian Night, connecting the idea of Sinbad and the idea of Nika to the physical being Alexander the Great, since his conquest into Egypt after its rule never really was established after conquering it, since he died of poisoning at an actual ceremony where the Ptolemies took over that newly unified Egypt.
Do you know what's really based about the Alexander the Great connection? From that, we can see that in One Piece, Joy Boy and Noland were about 400 years apart, if we're using the current day and age of One Piece as a metric to subtract from, since we don't know how the Age of Kain or the Age of Heaven were calculated. But in our real history, Napoleon himself and his conquest into Egypt was about 400 years after the Ptolemies already took over that unified Egypt after the death of Alexander the Great, the myth of the man that conquered almost all of Mesopotamia solo dolo. That sounds a lot like Sinbad, right? And here's what's really cool about the Sinbad connection as well. Sinbad's first journey, he stole a bird named a roc. Peep game, alright? Wanted had a villain, six-sided spiel. He was hunting down a girl named Anne and her bird named Balloon. Balloon was a roc. It was a special type of bird that the black magic user was literally hunting down for its blood. We don't know where Kuru is right now, but remember in the Odin flashback, the Kurozumis were using sorcery fruits? Spinning back to the agenda. 100 years after that long arm, long leg war, Tontatas were enslaved by the celestial dragons, the Don Quixote family. And in the silhouette, we can see Tontatas being used to harvest. Interjection Tachii makes another appearance. In order to salvage my credibility, let's talk about Buggy D. Nefertari. If you go to my Twitter, at Tachii Spins, you'll notice my banner, made by the goated Boko Monde. Quality. Biologically, Buggy and Vivi have the same hair. Now, how can I substantiate the Buggy D. Nefertari take? Well, just like how the silhouette to Joy Boy was apparently a foreshadowing to how Joy Boy was in fact a human and not an ancient Oni, Buggy was picked up at the green city of Elumalu in Paradise, because it's not really confirmed where on the Grand Line they picked up Buggy, but since Rayleigh was rolling with the Pirate King at that time, and the Rayleigh family, I'll get into that, descended from Merijua, and Rayleigh himself stole a boat because his house burned down. Since Lily D. Nefertari herself draws inspiration from Princess Ozma from The Wizard of Oz, chapter 161, the Green City of Elumalu. That place right there was the Emerald City, and Buggy himself very well could be the wizard behind the curtain, because when you pull back the curtain, there's always a clown. Notice how Joker is the only nickname for Doflamingo, and he's the only person who cackles as loudly as he does, while at the same time and never showing what his eyes look on purpose, because Oda is hiding how many rings Doflamingo has in his eyes. I promise you, thanks to the idea of shared knowledge through devil fruits. We'll get into shared knowledge a lot later. But Buggy D Nefertari, or Buggy D Nerona, since for some reason the narrative always seems to surround him. Notice how he's currently fighting for the One Piece and represents the fame aspect in the trinity of wealth, fame, and power that exist in Cross Guild. Abrupt musical transition back to next segment. 100-year slavery. Harkening back to earlier in the video with Saint Shepherd Jupiter, the warrior god of agriculture, would have been his department to oversee that Tantata slavery. But what were they harvesting? Devil fruits. They were literally making devil fruits. But how? By drawing on that imaginative dimension that we all call hockey. Yeah. It's more than just a power system. It's an actual physical, tangible reality that people pull in power from. It's so abundant that it's everywhere in One Piece. Literally anything that is alive or can experience the concept of striving for the meaning of freedom can gain that haki. Perfect example, Papeg. Not only did he spawn teeth and eyes into himself and become the second best fashion designer on the One Piece planet, the first being Pandaman, of course, Doskoi, could possibly learn basic armament and basic observation haki, even the fighting dugongs. And to extend that even further, the Sea Kings, they're able to communicate using the voice of all things. That in of itself should cement the idea that everything is biologically and genetically connected to that higher dimension, and you can only gain access to that higher dimension with consciousness of it. Luffy awakened his hakis. Zoro awakened his haki. All of the Straw Hats awakened their haki. But look at the terminology. They were enlightened to what they could achieve due to their dream and their drive to make it real. Anything that humans can imagine is a possibility in reality.
This is the core principle of Hermeticism. Names have power through perception. Mont Blanc Cricket and Jewelry Bonnie both refute the false narratives being placed upon their family names, that being Nolan the Liar and the Tyrant King Bartholomew Kuma. And funny enough, the name, your name, is an aspect of your soul in Egypt. Names have weight, and through your creative desires can you shape that imagination and feel that imagination into existence with your willpower or your haki. Regarding names though, the Alabastan Poneglyph doesn't name a Nefertari on it at all. Deadass, where's the Nefertari younger brother that couldn't protect Lily D. Nefertari? Nefertari D. Joyboy wrote down these 13 poneglyphs that reveal the real history of the Void Century and what the One Piece is and how to get to it. How does one write onto indestructible metals though, seeing as how Roger needed the assistance of Kozuki Odin in order to do it? Well, the samurai on Wano are specifically able to perform something called Ryo, and that's not exclusive to Wano. It's just the applications of it have only been shown on Wano. So if you have a shared society of different civilizations, eventually techniques are going to be kind of blended over and kind of mix and match. Oda does this all the time, and this is called syncretism.
You can't keep getting away with it!
These methods are the methods in which the Apology to Fishman Island was written. Yeah, Oda thought he was really sweet. I'm locked in. So let's review the information dumped onto us. Inside the room with the 5 Gorsei demons, yes, demons. They were demons before demon fruits existed. Cobra D. Nefertari states there are no mentions of Queen Lily's name. She did not come back to rule Alabasta after visiting Murjua, and her little brother took the throne in Alabasta instead. Is there anything you might be able to tell us about her? In fact, there are 26 poneglyphs in total, but only 13 detailed the erased history and the path to the One Piece.
If you remember in the beginning, I brought up Scheherazade. Not only was she a cartoon, she was a real person, an actual queen, promised to a king, and she needed to make up a 1001 Arabian Nights, the series of tales that she told, and the most famous one that she told was Sinbad, Conqueror of the Seven Seas. A literal fairy tale she made up so then the dude could go to bed in order for her to stay alive so she wasn't assassinated. Flip that on its head and include the magic emerald city of Wizard of Oz and its dead princess, and now we've syncretized what happened to Lily di Nefertari herself. With the confirmation of the Great Mu from House Nerona being from the Cloboterman family of the Ox Royce, ancient beetle ship, don't worry, we get into that later. Ivankov, Panda Man, was referred to as the god of the Queen World, right? By Bon Clay. And Bon Clay's belief in those miracles literally were fueled by his imagination, tempered in his heart like a furnace, and was fueled by his guts. How can I support that? The eyes on these wolves literally represent desire. Same thing as Luffy's eyes, the only time that he's ever seen a holy sea cat. Flashback to earlier when I said that Freya had a chariot led by 2 cats, it was also led by a boar. A boar is also a type of ox, isn't it? An Ox Royce, a beetle ship. Don't worry, we get into that. What I brought up at the very beginning was a little bit of a sexy time reference, but at the same time, it's also metatextually representative of the divine and the ordinary communing together as one, becoming a consummate thinker. Celestial Dragon Buggy di Nefertari. Let me slow it down a little bit though, because I do have to have a one-to-one conversation with you. Yes, you, dear viewer. I've brought up in previous parts and previous videos how I think that Vivi is still an endgame player in the story. She absolutely is. Lelucia was splashed down by water. Its sea level rose. The reason why I think that she's gonna be an endgame player, the crux of it, the core, because the core of things is important. It's where secrets lie. Don't worry, we get into that. But my personal favorite scene in all of One Piece was Vivi being fucking stupid in Alabasta and Luffy punching the shit out of her. Oda said that in an SBS confirmed straight from the horse's mouth, or rather in this case the fishman's mouth. I just had a little bit of a brain blast right now. Dinosaurs aren't dinosaurs in One Piece. They're fucking sea kings. Holy shit. Yeah, Luffy learned the word dinosaur on Little Garden. He didn't know what dinosaurs were. For some reason, he called them Neptunians. So, remember Ben Beckman, chapter 1? Yeah, he's apparently the smartest man in the East Blue when he was in the East Blue at that time. Don't worry about the Captain Kuro take until Luffy breaks the canon, pending canon event, playlist in description. But Ben Beckman, former Cypher Pole agent, just like Crocodile himself, Mr. Zero, don't worry, we get into that. And Dragon, don't worry, I have a bit of a Crocopole addendum cooking. Hopefully that's done by the time it's done baking. But Ben Beckman, if he was a former Cypher Pole agent, with who's who, oh my god, Shanks rolled up on the Nika fruit with Ben Beckman. Ben Beckman was hunting down who's who was former Cypher Pole as well. Oh my god, he was an inside man. Oh shit. This isn't in real time like actual retcon of the script, because holy shit. Yeah, I'm gonna be pumping out way more content, I promise you. But back to the crux of why I think Vivi is an endgame player and why I like the scene where Vivi got punched so much. Oda said that his hardest scene to draw was Vivi crying, "Please stop fighting." He couldn't stop crying apparently. The man felt so many things. The ultimate revenge as a writer is breaking those feelings. Ego death. That's the only way to die in One Piece. If you're forgotten. If there's no conflict, there's no future. Because conflict is a contrast of abstracts. And the technology of language is the strongest thing in stories. In this video, we get into the technology of language and why poneglyph language text is what connects interdimensional things. And thank you so much for entertaining this tangent and all of these tangents. I'm just completely spinning out of control at this point. If you want to spin out of control as well, or if you're feeling it as well, and right now, the Tachii Nosu Kingdom is preaching with the entire holy choir. Yes, all of these lovely people listed here promised free commission. You have all been so amazing. Thank you, genuinely. And stick around until the very end. The credits are a little bit sappy, but One Piece is a gift. And like Luffy, the real treasure of that gift wouldn't make any real sense to him, because he doesn't care about whose panties he has in his hand, whether it's females or not. He grabbed Frankie's, he was willing to steal them. Promise you, panties at Laugh Tale. And if not in Oda's canon, then maybe in Vex's canon. Over at this fun little One Piece D&D thing we got going on the Side Piece Sunday collab channel, the Scarlet Pirates. Playlist and album to come in the future, including visualizers. Saturdays, maybe Sundays, maybe Tuesdays, scheduled to be discussed. Don't worry, we'll make an official statement. Just head over to the Twitter.
Try Jesus. Please don't try me.
But focus more on the comic aspect of this title. The cover story, titled Comic Strip, features our drippy Witherian wizards waiting for Nami's return to Witheria. This is foreshadowing to where the Straw Hats will end up after the Egghead incidents. They're gonna meet up with the wizards, and the wizards are just gonna float to the moon. The wizards also appear in the covers of 555 and 556, and we see they've crystallized fire inside a bubble. Knowing that Lilith Punk is searching for an undying flame, what if these flames are the endless energy source that Vegapunk is referring to? Vegapunk has been continuing the Void Century research, all in spite of the agenda to forget and erase the past. And I think that these flames represent Haki. I will get back to that, but Progressio is also referencing Ragnarok as well, but there is no canon future in One Piece.
Man,
Hey,
there you
Tachii,
go
aren't
with
you
that
talking a little bit
bullshit.
crazy now? No future, but Toki's fruit exists. Exactly. Toki's fruit does exist. And Toki's entire experience was jumping around the different futures of One Piece until she jumped into the canon one. Yes, getting down by the boy Kozuki Odin was her canon event.
You can't keep getting away with
And
it.
now let me spin this narrative for you, because it's even supported by Luffy himself fighting Katakuri, who used Future Sight for about 2 seconds. Luffy's direct response in Snake Man was to outright move faster than the future that Katakuri could see. And if you remember earlier in the video, Luffy being described as a dream breaker, there is no future that exists unless you create it for yourself.
Oda canonizing the SBSs proves that, and even the elderly Luffy from a different future proves that as well. Death is not death in One Piece either. It's just spectating. Ace couldn't be Sabo, so he's reverse boosting in easier lobbies. But this logic is even consistent in most mythologies, because in Norse mythology at least, the present was represented with the Great World Tree Yggdrasil, and the past was represented with the Great Well of Erd. Just follow me here. I think that the power of friendship is the abstract translation of Haki. Dark matter. An endless energy source that is strong enough to hold stars and celestial bodies together. And this is where the string in comic string theory applies. So buckle up. This one's a bit of a doozy, okay? And also, dark matter isn't any particular type of Haki, but the literal aspect of willpower. Because Haki is just the physical manifestation of your reality and the conviction of your belief overwriting the current reality that you are in. So time is not linear, it's cyclical. There is no canon future because Luffy from a different future and Katakuri's future sight supports this. And even Toki's description of how her fruit works proves that you can never rewrite the present or the past, you can only change the future. She even states it's impossible for people to travel to the past. However, traveling to the future is very possible. Toki was bouncing around different timelines until meeting the canon future of Kozuki Odin. And Kozuki Odin himself was considered a miracle baby, since the Kurozumi were the next in line over Wano. In One Piece, the canon timeline is a world of dreams, desires, and miracles. Everything that humans can imagine is a possibility in reality. Physicist Willie Caron crashed down with 2 other captains after 2 reveries of the St. Brice's travel post the ancient giant attack of the Holy Land of Marijois. The Iron Giant was given the will to protect the cloud-drifting St. Brice based on the instruction to protect the ancient weapon Uranus's lineage. That robot crawled up the Sun Tree Eve and ran out of willpower right before the assault. There is no devil fruit tree in One Piece. The tree is an abstract term being used by Oda in order to reference a series of events, because creating the Philosopher's Stone was also known as finding the Diana tree. So there were no devil fruits, but there were devils before there were devil fruits, based on the ancient tradition known as Hermeticism. Let me just break it down. Everything that exists is a collection of matter and energy. For example, the sunny is a structure of atoms Light bounces off those atoms, it reflects in your eyes, and your brain perceives it. That's how we perceive everything. Your brain gives you signals of sounds, shapes, and ideas, and there are things we experience that are entirely perceived reality. Those are things that are sourced outside our perspective because we never truly experience the outside world directly. Humans live directly inside of the consensus universe that we paint for ourselves. If everyone simultaneously decided to shift how light waves and nerve impulses are interpreted, then they've effectively changed the entire universe. So a devil as they currently exist would stop existing as a devil and instead spawn in as a devil fruit to be desired if everyone agreed it was supposed to be that way. Oda SBS Volume 41. One day someone said they don't want to fly anymore. Then everyone lost their faith. Literal hermeticism. This is the basis of all magic systems. The universe is mental. If everyone stops viewing one thing one way and instead decides to view it another way, then again, they've effectively changed the universe.
Perceived reality. Let's talk about it. Volume 4 Billion confirmed a lot of wild and wacky things for the One Piece world, like the idea that life return techniques are not limited to cipher pole agents. Uta's hair legit functions like Kumadori's. So using Uta as the crux of this, because she is foreshadowing everything that I'm going to be saying right now, including the warrior drip on her currently, and even the size of her crown. Oda thought he was sweet hiding Lily D. Nefertari's crown behind Cobra's dialogue box, but again, we're locked in, so we know that that crown is probably going to be as tall as Uta's. And that Uta herself in this warrior drip gives us room to connect another real-life figure to Lily D. Nefertari in terms of inspiration, the Indian Joan of Arc, Lakshmi Bai. Yeah, India had their own Joan of Arc arc, but you gotta wait for the Hindu Musketeers addendum on that one. I'm gonna be releasing addendums going forward as add-ons to this, because these are cool little things that definitely need to be explored, because hey, Oda plays around with everything. Syncretism. But here's a little bit of a teaser. Oda called Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji the three musketeers in this canon color spread. Now, what do I mean by the word canon color spread? Chapter 310, the Groggy Ring. Do you see the pink dragon? Do you see the three straw hats? These were the three most influential figures during the arc of Wano. During the saga of Wano. So let's focus on Semi-Kikon. Literally translates to life return, but Semi-Kikon Uta connects us to the idea of biofeedback. And we see that this is a frequency that all the characters naturally emit, according to Chopper. And through biofeedback, that is what the characters in One Piece use to reach and tap into that, quote, haki dimension earlier. What gives me this inspiration for the slot train? A big piece of inspiration that nobody has ever really put together. The amount of references to Trigun One Piece has. It's ridiculous, even going as far back as Wanted Chapter 1. But in Trigun, they have plants. And plants aren't just plants, but they're power plants. They generate power for people around those cities. And those plants are aliens. They connect to a higher dimension, and that's what those people on the planet of No Man's Land, that's what they use in order to basically generate wells, water, run their electricity, everything. Now, devil fruits are just the crystallized versions of what people desired as a concept, combined together with all of the people who signed the contract of gaining that abstract ability. Yes, when you eat a devil fruit, you sign a contract. Huge shoutouts, of course, to a Nakama for Life co-captain Dire Regulus with the no devil fruit tree theory. Link in description for a more concise idea. But over here, we spin out of control. So let me spin this narrative for you real quick. Egghead Island confirmed to us, at least in imagery, that Oda is basically referencing all of the greatest things to come from Japan over the last 100 years. Trigun was one of those things, and Oda is a man that carries his history with him. Example, when he was an assistant worker for the Rurouni Kenshin series, he created the character that is the direct inspiration and thought design behind the scabbard Kiku. Yeah, Kiku Nojo of the Fallen Snow
was the biggest fanboy of the dead mummy man that was the rival to Rurouni Kenshin. And now if you factor in all of the design on Egghead Island referencing Astro Boy, and surprisingly a lot of people kind of miss this, but the Hawaiian stuff is another Disney reference. Lilo and Stitch. The Seraphim are all Stitches. Who's Lilo in this circumstance? Why not Bonnie, the princess of this arc, to come from the Sorbet Kingdom, like my boys Captain Kid and Three-Eye Killer Kurozumi? But you gotta wait for the Shiki Kurozumi theory dropping from the boy Lord Vegeta. But to substantiate the princess of the arc thing, in almost every arc that Oda has ever written, there's always been a princess. Rebecca, Shirahoshi, Vivi, now we have Bonnie. One of the major factions, or rather one of the major players that would be assisting the Straw Hats, is either a friend, Nakama, ally, or related to that princess of the arc. But I'm deviating, I'm sorry. Trigun shows us that plants connect to higher dimensions. And in One Piece, devil fruits connect to higher dimensions, and people can naturally connect to that higher Haki dimension because everybody is a plant within the context of this Trigun reference, simply because if Garp were to die, just due to the idea of people wanting freedom and people striving for a new future that isn't written or isn't set in stone, Garp himself could legitimately become a fucking devil fruit. I am not kidding. Himothy Prime, Monkey D. Garp, would die and become an aspect of the fruit Nika, because Nika was a hero, despite Luffy hating the concept of being a hero, since he would have to, quote, share his meat, while at the same time, he throws out the actual treasure he can't scale higher than the One Piece, a physical beetle, to random gorilla niggas that he just met for a day. That Haki dimension is that dark matter dimension, and that's explained exclusively due to the idea that dark matter right now in our current science is thought to be the substance that bonds and holds stars together, making it the strongest force in the universe. The connections made along the way are the connections that crystallize into stars, or in Nika's case, wishing stars. Nika granted Wano's wish of freedom, and it became true on a Sunday when he punched a fish in the ground. Wishing Star Nika agenda born right now. He literally showed up on an eclipse in front of the second moon in One Piece. Yes, there are 2 moons in One Piece, and in fact there are 2 suns as well. Do you know how I can support that on this entirely flagrant tangent that I just decided to deviate towards? The Oharan globe. I don't care that it has 5 celestial bodies. It has 3 effing rings. Count 1, 2, 3. It has 3 different orbits, 5 celestial bodies, and only one of them is individually separate from the One Piece planet itself. Now, how can I substantiate this? In the canon color of that Nika awakening, that fucking moon is white. During the cover story of Kobe becoming the new hero of the Marines, the moon is fucking yellow. He's training under a goddamn yellow moon, like at Tatooine. Star Wars reference. But let's bring it back down. The power of friendship, or dark matter, or Haki, makes dreams come true. And biofeedback, yeah, we're rotating all the way back now, gives the biggest weight to the Ghost in the Wire Neurona origin that we've discussed throughout this entire video, with the Kvasir origin myth brought up at the beginning of the video. Because in Volume 4 Billion, Vegapunk built a prototype Denden Mushi that operates exactly like Twitch TV with no ads. And Denden Mushis are huge because their kanji expands their existence and capabilities to more than just snails. They are electricity transmission bugs, meaning beetles can pick up on that same shit too. How can I substantiate this? Bonnie on Egghead Island self-deleted with a lightsaber, and that lightsaber summoned stag beetles. Luffy was instantly quick with the hands to try and cheer up that pastel Bonnie with those beetles, and that's why the beetle piece is the real treasure. A literal giant beetle ship which was what Sora Warrior of the Sea's most famous ship was. And why would he even need a ship if you're able to run on water, by the way? Because he was meant to physically meet and travel to the land of the dead, to visit the country of souls, or the land of the imaginary, which was the world of crystallized dreams and desires, aka the established One Piece setting right now. The crust of the planet and the core within it. Beetles are every child's dream, and again, Luffy struggles to put them over the actual One Piece. That's why Luffy and Rogers, both exact words, were "I'm gonna break the sky's treasure chest." What's the sky's treasure chest? Reverse Mountain. How do I think that? Because of the well that represents the yawning magical void of creation that is literally creating the lake of the all blue that Sanji with his dumbass completely missed when he wished to visit and go to the all blue. Putting a nice little bow on the Lily D. Nefertari yawning magical gap connection in terms of the Freya mythology I brought up at the beginning, because Oda loves his Norse mythology. The Red Force and its design directly scream Norse mythology. In fact, the idea that Shanks is a celestial dragon gives weight to the idea that I've been playing around with my head quite a bit. The Red Line Counterforce. Hear me out. Half of a recipe to bake a planet that doesn't spin is a frozen molten core. Well, if you have two giant holes, one by Enies Lobby, one by Reverse Mountain, literally funneling ocean water consistently to that molten core, well, you have half of that recipe. Do you know what the other recipe is? In order to have your planet to stop from spinning? A red line counterforce. The red line is the prime meridian of One Piece. And since there are slaves that operate all of the electronics and moving aspects of the artificial devil forest, yes, Mary Joie's Holy Land was an actual devil fruit forest manufacturing site, almost like a car manufacturing plant, since Lunarians themselves had internal combustion engines and Tontatas were able to literally interact with physical concepts like belief and desire. Then the red line would be more than just the prime meridian. With all them dead slaves around, it'd be a bloody meridian. Another metatextual reference to one of the darkest pieces of media ever written. And the hole by Enies Lobby is the Well of Erd, the well that holds the past, and due to the agenda to erase that past, it's consistently ushered in by eternal light. Enies Lobby is always daytime. It's literally holding the past. If you put a D in front of Enies Lobby, you get denies lobby. It denies entrance to the ancient kingdom because that's the second hole. So let's circle back to Zanisha and the moving sky island of Zo real quick, because that was also brought up at the beginning of the video and we kind of need to put a little bow on that one as well. So Zunisha is canonically taller than the red line. And in previous parts, I've brought up the potential origin of the Florian Triangle Giants being the Clobotermen of the sunken ships at the bottom of the sheet before. Well, if Zunisha operates like a ship, which it does, then Pluton's mechanics and the Florian Triangle Clobotermen could be connected through the elephant graveyard idea. Hear me out, isn't it a little bit weird? Momonosuke was the only one to be able to command Zunisha despite his direct father being able to hear that same elephant as well. Well, just like Shirahoshi, Momonosuke is an ancient weapon. He's able to command a pack of these elephants because this is an actual type of animal that's born. They've just gone extinct. And in fact, that elephant is Salvador Dali inspired. And there's another piece of Salvador Dali artwork that depicts a pack of elephants following a man holding a cross. And Plutons are just deep sea geysers. So if Zunisha stomps hard enough, it can make a deep sea geyser. Now compound that with the mole dragon evidence of not just Momonosuke's ability to swim through the Red Sea of lava that we see through the flaming dragon drum final move that Kaido lost with, that Luffy broke his dream with. And not only is this supported also by Kalgaro's words of honoring their ancestors as gods, but also the reaction by civilians to his father, Kozuki Odin's introduction, and the introduction of the time-hopping Princess Toki. When people saw Odin, they called him an Umibozu. Ancient weapons were gods, and gods were warriors. So let's dissect the power of shared understanding and the technology of language. The technology of language is the most powerful thing in stories, because language is the ether in which we transmit abstracts, and these abstracts create context to existence. Look at our language, for example. Notice how we have words to describe the past actions, I ran. Words to describe present actions, I run. But no words to describe future actions. We say, I will run. It takes will to create the future. Here's another example of the power of language. Fade to black, close your eyes, and now just listen. This is going to be super easy, so just hear me out. Currently, right now, I'm sitting at my desk on my chair, looking at a small 6-inch platform that is holding up 2 computer screens with a webcam on top of it, with a nice little glowy rainbow mic in front of me. Now, if you pictured something like this, do you know what we just did? I created an accurate mental image in your head completely remotely and from a different point in time. Literal telepathy through the ether of time and space. That's what we just did right now. And that's the power of the abstracts in One Piece. That's why I've been pushing the poneglyph transdimensional language agenda for so long, because Nika exists as an abstract, and language and stories is how we transmit abstracts and crystallize them for generations. But this is also the perfect time to circle back to the reason why panties are at Laugh Tale. Understanding is the reward of a mature romance, and frivolity is the price of an immature romance. Odin and the Roger Pirates explored the whole world jovially, and of course, they would come to an understanding of an unwritten message left by a pirate who could paint with the colors of the wind, like the Nefertari lineage is capable of. And if Roger already read about Joy Boy's story through the most famous comic in One Piece, Sora, Warrior of the Sea, then of course a fanboy would understand what his hero left behind. To substantiate the idea that panties are at Laugh Tale, what was Luffy's invitation for Frankie to join his crew? He took his fucking panties. What did Robin grab when she was inviting Frankie onto the ship? She yoinked his fucking Tamashi. Wordplay is the biggest evidence to everything that's being said. And what's sad and hilarious is that Rayleigh being the celestial dragon simply because Dark Twin, Dark King Rayleigh met the Pirate King, Goldie Roger, after leaving Marijua, possibly implying that Rayleigh himself even could have given more insight to what was going on with those panties if it was the same generational story being told over and over and over again. And the Rayleigh family, by the way, I need to substantiate this to put a little bow on the Holy Knights agenda as well that I brought up at the beginning of the video. Saint Shepherd Jupiter gave up his actual name, or rather the D that would have fit in where a number is currently, when he was inducted into the Gorosei. He's one of the only Gorosei that we can directly look at and say, yeah, you don't really fit here. Jupiter is also the only one to have that Gorosei play as well, simply because he would be the 10th Holy Knight. And if panties were stolen, and thanks to Frankie we know that they can be gender neutral panties now, that's why Odin ripped out the last page from his journal. Because you can only understand certain things by getting there. English, for example, there is no word to define what an ellipses followed by a question mark is, but universally when we see this, it's understood as what the fuck. Another example is dragon, defined either as perfected transformation, the dark twin, or a giant serpent. The basis of Celestial Dragon sources itself from the D clan, and even Musama directly says that they removed the D moniker. Yes, I think D's and Celestial Dragons were the same. Let me substantiate that a bit more. Let's start with Celestial Dragon Figureland Shanks. First, Shanks never sat with the Gorosei. Where is his scar? I'll pin the strongest answer in the comment section. But Shanks was the adoptive protege of Goldie Roger. Roger's son frivolously anointed Sabo Outlook a D member. Why wouldn't Roger give Shanks a D? Because Roger knew Shanks would be hunted as a D member by the Tenryobito, like Bartholomew D. Kuma. The cover of 738 foreshadows what I'm talking about. 22 mice, 20 founding families, and 2 sovereigns in the middle of a Pangaea castle.
Let's stay on this cover for a little bit, because it kind of vindicates the entire Holy Knights agenda that I'm going to be building up in the future. Because the 9 Holy Knights, if you remember earlier in the video about the Nerona family being connected to the meta canvas oil painting about Nero's torches and the 12 martyrs that were pinned for the burning of Rome, if you add 12 to 9, you get 21. Joy Boy was a Nefertari. The Ors addendum that I'm going to be dropping in the future is the fact that Ors was the Voltron robot that assisted building all of the current Pangaea castle with the other Oni robots, seeing as how Frankie is going to be the going forward template that Oda uses for ancient Onis, since Ors II was a giant robot being operated by Moria and was known as the Continent Puller. So Ors I pulled the tectonic plates alongside the other ancient Onis, and his body currently resides in what I've previously discussed in an older video, link in description, the summit to High West, Corkwood, which is right beside Reverse Mountain. But this cover, Treble Army, Special Officer Sugar. What does a treble clef do? A treble clef changes the pitch of the notes being played. So you have Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do. You got Dofi, his brother Rosinante, showing the duality of these Celestial Dragon families. One was an assistant to a really good guy, Sengoku. The other one was the assistant of a really bad guy, Kaido. So then you have Rei, the Rayleigh family, Mi, Mihawk, Fa, Figarland, So, I have no idea, but Sol, for some reason, kind of fits a little bit. T, TT Nefertari, La, Lafitte. Lafitte is also a part of a Celestial Dragon family, seeing as how Mihawk wasn't even the slightest bit surprised that Lafitte was literally tap dancing by the corner shelf of Enies Lobby where Sengoku and Tsuru were sitting. Thank you for entertaining this interjection. Mihawk is a Celestial Dragon, Rayleigh was a Celestial Dragon, Lafitte was a Celestial Dragon. All of that was built and foreshadowed from this cover. The 12 martyrs were 12 families exodused out of Marijua, and the 9 remaining Holy Knights are the remaining families that currently serve the Gorosei. And last note that is super important about this. This cover was requested by Noda Skywalker. Nobody is named Noda Skywalker on purpose. That's a Star Wars reference. Oda uses this name to foreshadow future events. That's why I'm saying Haki is the Force. Transition to next segment.
All roads lead back to the Gorosei and Imu being the final antagonists of the series. The reasoning is based on Luffy's dream specifically, which is very complex, but really dumb in hindsight. But first, Luffy needs to be Pirate King, and second, needs to steal the One Piece in order to achieve his dream. Luffy described his travels in Skypiea as a dream inside of a dream, and he also struggles to put the actual One Piece over an Atlas Beetle, which he describes as something every child has wished for. Luffy's narrative and literal dream is to break the fourth wall, or to beat the Dawn. How were these Roger's words as well? Well, due to the shared love of stories that all children have. Joy Boy and Sora being the parody echoed for hundreds of years, it would make sense that it would eventually gain popularity and some form of reverence. Kaido even thought that same shit getting boxed up by Gear 5 Luffy, even when he used his Ragnaroku. Sora, warrior of the sea, rode with a giant beetle and ran on water, and consistently fought the augmented villain Stealth Black, with the confirmation of the electricity transmission bug being the Dended Mushis, and the beetle in Egypt being the key to the afterlife. The power of the Nefertari occurs inside the lost chamber of Marie-Joie. The guards of Pangaea even reference missing parties around the legendary Phantom Room. So not only was the Great Erdwell present and important, but so was the spring of Mimir, where it was believed if you were to drink from it, you would gain magical knowledge. That's what Hero Water was, which is a knockoff derivative of what Bink Sake is. Bink Sake is the waters of the past. An ever-wandering laugh tale sounds like delirium. If somebody wants to get off a ride, or if somebody doesn't want to fly anymore, well, then that's just how it's gotta be, right? And if there's no future, with the past and present consistently influencing each other cyclically, then the House of Nerona was the family to brew Bink's Sake. The ancient brewery is the literal frozen metal core of the planet under Reverse Mountain, formerly guarded by Lunarians. Yes, the former gods of the Red Line lived by Reverse Mountain, guarding Bink Sake, which was an elixir to access the alternative Haki dimension. The Nefertari and the Lunarian connection exists as hero water, or the fatal fuel that they produce, since the Nefertari Joy Boy led the conflict of the 100-year void. So Reverse Mountain, as it exists currently, is not only a giant treasure chest or a giant X that marks the spot, but it is also a magneto-hydrodynamic drive. And this is a method of generating electricity by grinding salt water or plasma, ultimately turning it into a rotor. The Grand Line is generating electricity based off of the interactions of the different saline levels of the ocean, since the deep sea current and the deep current ionize the Grand Line, creating the ley lines that the log poses are able to pick up between islands. Reverse Mountain is the ultimate knock-up stream, and even the Tarai current within the Gates of Justice is a perpetual motion machine due to the different saline levels grinding against each other, technically creating energy. The core of the planet is the Ancient Kingdom, and the name of it was Tachii. Why Tachii? Wordplay, meta, and syncretism. Syncretism is the ancient tradition of fusing different cultures and pantheons together into a more unifying figure between civilizations. For example, Mesopotamian myths did this prolifically, but just to summarize, the term the Great American Melting Pot, where a bunch of different cultures come together and homogenize amongst themselves within society, is evidence of in real life syncretism. And Oda's been playing with this shit since the very beginning. Perfect example, an island eater being a giant goldfish is only funny if the entire planet is actually inside of a fishbowl. And also, the Tachii Kingdom is meta because Tachii Kingdom is a business that makes figurines, and they actually have some pretty good stuff. Hashtag not sponsored. Tachii connects souls, crowns, a tradition that Buddhists practice, and a literal endless knot that is meant to remove all negative emotions and turn black. Remembering Kalgara and Muse believed that their spirits or ancestors were connected to the trees, and those trees were connected to the afterlife, then the island of Whiskey Peak and all of the skulls that the Straw Hats were seeing on Skypiea visually allow us to connect flowers and burial, because I believe soulfire is what makes a black blade. Then the consistency of color to establish the connection of the underworld and the afterlife, logically, would be green, as even the afterlife is just an alternate hockey plane for desire and creation, seeing as how Lao Ji responded to Baby 5 crying for his soul to return. But watch out for the dedicated video on
You ain't fooling nobody.
But the Pangaea Castle is only called Pangaea Castle because it sits at the top of the interlocked tectonic plates of Pangaea. That's what the red line is. And if the Nefertari did not stay in Marie-Joie, I don't think Joy Boy owned the One Piece. I think he stole it. Let's flash back to Oda's theory of Jolly Rogers. Oda states they're symbols of death, and that it finds origin and meaning from multiple eras and multiple areas. The Jolly Roger refers to the term Red Lovely Rogue or Old Roger, where Old Roger with no G meant devil. Fitting because the lovely red villain stole the beetle, and protected it under Reverse Mountain, and the devil of the pirate era wanted it and found it and sparked the Olympics for an era of piracy to begin. Eam hates D's, and the Gorsei are all aware of the checkered fate, almost as if it's a physical thing, seeing as how they're talking about Sabo and his checkered fate as a non-D clan member. Guy, narratively, the fear of the unknown is a consistent theme in all horror, and traversing the unknown is thematically consistent in all romantic endeavor. The half and half existence of Lily D. Nefertari and Mu Norona sitting on the empty throne represents the great filter of all interdimensional travel. Humans crash landing onto the quote Sky King planet and capturing the physical dreams of the races such as the Tantara, which may be connected to the different types of islands on the top of the red line. Then devil fruits have their origin based in the botanical harvesting of Lunarians, mink, fishmen, giants, any enslaved races, as a window to that alternative dimensional space of dreams, memes, and desires. These powers manifested into the dimensional space of One Piece through a desired access point, and that imagination station is called the brain. Vegapunk said that everything is brought into this world with desire. Dreams, fate, soul, will, sentience, existence, emotion, all these things exist in your brain. They are tempered by your heart, and they are fueled by your guts. Let me really break your synapses with how much of a troll Oda can be. The 8th anime opening is called Crazy Rainbow, and there's a scene that's exactly the cover of chapter 373 called Doriki. Another scene is the cover of 241, Heaven's Judgment. Another scene is chapter 186 titled 4. The anime openings have been referencing canon color spreads, and Oda hides his enlightening revelations behind his cover pages, or rather his quote door pages, because that's what they refer to cover pages in Japan. The door page of the latest chapter, where Imu wanted the mother Fremu, we see a Denden Mushi, a frog and a cat frolicking with the Straw Hats in a puddle with a crazy rainbow reflected underneath it as Frankie chases them down. Question: where is Zoro? I will pin the best comment in the comment section. But Oda has been setting all of this up. Let's continue exposing the troll here. Vivi in the covers of 640 and 641, where we see the Noah crashing into the Fisherman Island after Vanderdecken passed out, is wearing a dress called a mermaid one-piece dress. Yeah, you heard me right. These things are called one-piece dresses. On the note of subaquatic peoples, the chapter titles of 640 and 641 can be read as a sentence. What are you up to on top of Fishman Island? English, for example, there is kingdom, and the name of it was Tamashi. Why Tamashi? Wordplay, meta, and syncretism. Syncretism is the ancient tradition of fusing different cultures and pantheons together into a more unifying figure between civilizations. For example, Mesopotamian myths did this prolifically, but just to summarize, the term the Great American Melting Pot, where a bunch of different cultures come together and homogenize amongst themselves within society, is evidence of in real life syncretism, and Oda's been playing with this shit since the very beginning. Perfect example, an island eater being a giant goldfish is only funny if the entire planet is actually inside of a fishbowl. And also, the Tamashi Kingdom is meta because Tamashi Kingdom is a business that makes figurines, and they actually have some pretty good stuff. Hashtag not sponsored. Tamashi connects souls, crowns, a tradition that Buddhists practice, and a literal endless knot that is meant to remove all negative emotions and turn black. Remembering Kalgara and Muse believed that their spirits or ancestors were connected to the trees, and those trees were connected to the afterlife, then the island of Whiskey Peak and all of the skulls that the Straw Hats were seeing on Skypiea visually allow us to connect flowers and burial, because I believe soul fire is what makes a black blade. Then the consistency of color to establish the connection of the underworld and the afterlife, logically, would be green. as even the afterlife is just an alternate hockey plane for desire and creation, seeing as how Lao Ji responded to Baby 5 crying for his soul to return. But watch out for the dedicated video on
You
the
ain't
Party Beat
fooling
channel. But
nobody.
the Pangaea Castle is only called Pangaea Castle because it sits at the top of the interlocked tectonic plates of Pangaea. That's what the red line is. And if the Nefertari did not stay in Mary Jewel, I don't think Joy Boy owned the One Piece. I think he stole it. Let's flash back to Oda's theory of Jolly Rogers. Oda states they're symbols of death and that it finds origin and meaning from multiple eras and multiple areas. The Jolly Roger refers to the term Red Lovely Rogue or Old Roger, where Old Roger with no G meant devil. Fitting because the lovely red villain stole the beetle and protected it under Reverse Mountain, and the devil of the pirate era wanted it and found it and sparked the Olympics for an era of piracy to begin. Eam hates D's, and the Gorosei are all aware of the checkered fate, almost as if it's a physical thing, seeing as how they're talking about Sabo and his checkered fate as a non-D clan member. And the Lovecraftian aspects of the final villains of the series was foreshadowed by Enel himself and his guys. Before cutting himself off, Oda said, Jaya is about marriage. Enel called Kami the fear of death. Nami was willing to travel to that world of dreams. Enel said he'd pull all humans down from the sky. Narratively, the fear of the unknown is a consistent theme in all horror, and traversing the unknown is thematically consistent in all romantic endeavor. The half and half existence of Lily D. Nefertari and Mu Nerona sitting on the empty throne represents the great filter of all interdimensional travel. Humans crash landing onto the quote Sky King planet and capturing the physical dreams of the races such as the Tantata, which may be connected to the different types of islands on the top of the red line. Then devil fruits have their origin based in the botanical harvesting of Lunarians, mink, fishmen, giants, any enslaved races, as a window to that alternative dimensional space of dreams, memes, and desires that Vegapunk described to us. Oda in an SBS stated that devil fruits are hated by every sea. The Gorosei shepherd Jupiter, I believe, was the head administrator of this devil fruit forest, and J. Garcia Saturn was the head admin of the proliferation on the backs of slaves. Luffy has such a large reverence and respect for the dead, is almost sage-like, but he childishly expresses that wisdom. A romantic gesture of a jeweled beetle would be completely lost on Luffy due to his immaturity. That's why the One Piece is not related to wealth, fame, or power, or status, or even rule. It's connection bonds, and the literal rope that unites all creation. The One Piece being a bioengineered electric transmission all-terrain beetle opens up the door for Oda to go really wild as to why Roger was too early. Remember, Oda made canon the term Denden Mushi, having the kanji being electrical transmission bug, plus a Heracles beetle or an Atlas beetle or a stag beetle is something Luffy struggles to put over the actual One Piece as a treasure. Is it his fate or is it his destiny? We don't know. But Sora is accompanied with the mech beetle in almost every depiction that he's in. This cover was the biggest hint that the One Piece is a beetle, and being able to transmit void sentry signals from its eyes, an antenna to pick up on any signal or any frequency in every dimensional plane. Why would the world government allow for the most popular comic in the world to even depict the One Piece? Well, it's unfair to assume that the world government even knows what the One Piece is. So, like Nolan the Liar, parodies are a mirror to reality through the reflective lens of perspectives. Just like how the sky is the mirror to the sea, Luffy and Roger wanted to break the sky and steal its treasure, and to claim Sora, warrior of the sea's giant mech beetle. The best place to hide history is through parody, through romance fiction, and that's the true magic of One Piece. Louis Arnaud, the writer of the Bragman, described Little Garden as an island of giants despite having dinosaurs present. That explorer decided to title his documents and his adventures as a romance fiction. Books being passed down means ideas and dreams do as well. If the most popular comic in the series is Sora Warrior of the Sea, then Luffy saying beetles are everything a child wishes for connects possibly to Roger's youth as well, and maybe his love of comics. Sabo's dream directly before he got blowed up was to write a book and explore the world, documenting a literal romance fiction. Luffy's dream is to break the fourth wall of creation. As a result, it would reconnect Usopp and his mom, Nami and her adoptive mom and her actual mom, Sanji and his mom, Robin and her mom. It would reunite Chopper and Hiriluk, Laboon, Brook and Calico Yorkie, Ace, Sabo and Luffy, and every single person lost on your journey through the ebbs and flows of fate. Now that would be truly romantic. I hope you found yourself surprised with an end card and credits, but there's nothing surprising you. You're way too smart for that. That's why I hope you've learned nothing from this. These videos aren't videos anymore. Not really, not at this point. These are love letters. Love letters I made for you. One Piece is a gift. One Piece is a 30-year odyssey predicated on everyone's ability to relate to the world, to the circumstances, and to the characters. I made this video for you, and Oda designed One Piece for us. These theory videos are just our love letters over a shared romance. The type of letters you find lost at sea, drifting forever until they reach you, ever wandering and ever laughing. I want you to feel as insanely in love with One Piece as I do, because despite what others may say, including myself, One Piece is a personal story. It's a personal one to me. It's indeed a personal one to a lot of people. An intimate one for some, and a romantic one for a lucky few. But that's why I rack my brain so hard doing the wildest mental gymnastics in these videos, because that's what love is. It's action, it's creation, it's work, and these are love letters I made for you. Not to entice you to a fantasy of an ever-wandering laugh tale, but rather an invitation to a truly romantic hurricane guided only by the brushstrokes of Eiichiro Oda. No matter your walk in life, no matter your experiences, no matter the hardships of what may have come and gone, One Piece is our story, and Oda loves One Piece. And that's why I hope you've learned nothing from this. You and you alone will understand One Piece, because it was written for you. Don't let this series convert you away from what you already believe. You just merely stumbled upon our love letters. I don't have anything else that I'm comfortable closing out with, so I'll just opt to repeat myself. One Piece is a gift.